Good morning, church. Scripture reading this morning will be coming from Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 8 through 20. And the word says, "If you see in a province the oppressions of the poor and the violation of justice and righteousness, do not be amazed at the matter, for the high official is watched by a higher, and there are yet higher ones over them. But this is gain for land in every way, a king committed to cultivated fields. He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much. But the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. There is a grievous evil that I have seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owner to his hurt, and those riches were lost in a bad venture. And he is father of a son, but he has nothing in his hand. As he came from his mother's womb, he shall go again, naked as he came, and shall take nothing for his toil that he may carry away in his hand. This also is a grievous evil, yet as he came shall he go. And what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness, in much vexation, and sickness, and anger. Behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink, and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, the few days of his life that God has given him. For this is his lot. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. For he will not much remember the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart." The word of our Lord.
All right, be seated. Picking up here in verse 8 of chapter 5. Last week, does anybody remember what we looked at last week? Well, the hint is if we're in verse 8, we did chapter 5, 1 through... Yeah, there we go. Thank you for playing. Wake up! I'm going to start telling really bad dad jokes. This is your first and last warning. So anyhow, right? Talking about what you're building for. And if you look at the whole book of Ecclesiastes, it begins with what the world will be or what the world is without God. How the world looks without God. That's why he uses the phrase vanity vanities. All the things that you do upon the earth, all the things that we do without God as its moral influence, without God being its leader in all things of the Christian life, is meaningless. The word vanity, again, it says up there on the wall, it says vapor. That's what it means. It translates into mist. The vapor that comes with your morning coffee that you can just swat away and it goes away. All the pursuits of life that we deem so important, divorced from the will of a holy God, is a vapor. And yet, we spend a great deal of our lives pursuing those things. Because as we see today, if we just had enough money, if I just had more wealth, I could do more cool stuff. And the fact of the matter is that mindset is never satisfied. In my own case, I just need one more gun. If I had one more gun, I'd be happy. And the minute I get that gun, I go to the gun store and I realize there's a gun they have that I don't have. And now I have to have that one too. And if I get that gun, I'll be happy for about 2 days. And I'll go down and go, ooh, that one's neat. At the end of the day, when my life is over, family members are going to get all these things that I put a great deal of value in, and they're going to sell them for the price I told my wife I paid, and not the value of what they are. Think about that for half a second. They're going to sell them for what I told my wife I paid for them, and not the actual value of what they are. Did y'all not get your coffee this morning? Come on, folks. Wake up. This is the day the Lord has made. And we're going to talk about this because here's the thing is money makes people weird. We're going to talk about money in this passage. Also in this passage, when you look at verses 8 through about 10, there's a problem in our text. One, the antecedent for what the passage is talking about is unclear. A lot of times you'll see this listed in the social gospel context of the persecution of the, let's talk about the poor and oppression of the poor. And it's kind of talking about that, but the problem is in English we shift it in that direction. But the antecedent's unclear because you also have the mention of kings and lands and multiple kings that oversee these things, and the antecedent for that is unclear. And so what we do as translators, we do our best to try to link these things together to make sure that the text has meaning in English, because in Hebrew it makes sense, but it's not translatable over in English. That makes sense. And that happens quite a bit. Back that up. This particular problem doesn't happen quite a bit, but translated from one language to another is a difficult task, and that's difficult. That's what I meant to say. So what we're going to begin with, if you see in a providence the oppression of the poor and the violation of justice and righteousness, do not be amazed at the matter. For the high official is watched by a higher, and there is yet a higher one's over him. But there is gain for the land in every way, the king committed to cultivating the fields. What does that mean? And that's why I said, when you look at it, we do our best to kind of cobble this together to give it some type of meaning. And the question becomes okay, is he talking about the oppression of people in the land and the king being responsible? Or is he talking about the fact that if there's oppression, are you surprised that there's oppression by government officials? Or are you wondering about the land being utilized by the king and the poor see that as oppression? Well, there's multiple reasons for that. One, in the ancient world outside of Israel, did people own land? No. You only had that in Israel. And so you don't only have that in Israel, but you have the predominance of that in Israel where the people have their own land. Typically, the land is owned by who? The king. And oddly enough, Israel has a stretch where that has changed for them. If you go and look over at 1 Samuel 8, 11 through 18, when Israel rejected God as their king and they demanded, give us a king! Give us a king like all the other kings on the earth. Samuel believed he was rejected. Right? God tells Samuel they haven't rejected you, they have rejected. Let's take a look here. We'll start in verse 10. So Samuel told all the word of the Lord to the people who are asking for a king. And he said to them, these will be the ways of the king who will reign over you. Now, up until this point, who reigned over the people? Who now do the people serve and are subject to? The king. And he will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them to his chariots, to be his horsemen, to run before his chariots. He will appoint for himself commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s. Some will plow his ground, to reap his harvest, to make implements of war, and implements of chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, bakers. He will take the best of your fields and your vineyards and olive orchards and give them to his servants. He will take the 10th of your grain and of your vineyards and give it to his officers and to his servants. He will take your male servants and your female servants and the best of your young men and your donkeys and put them to his work. He will take a 10th of your flocks, and you shall be his slaves. And in that day you will cry out because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves. But the Lord God will not answer you on that day. Why does he say that? Why does Samuel say that? Well, one, what had the children of Israel done? They'd rejected God. When you look in a world in which there is oppression of folks and misuse of justice, it usually happens in a time where the leadership of the nation, while they may mouth a theistic religion, are they really a theistic religion? Absolutely, the answer is no. It's not simply an American problem. You can go back through history throughout time where you see abuses both of the church and both by the state in numerous cases where they have these things. And notice what he says. If you see in the providence the oppressions of the poor and the violations of justice and righteousness, do not be amazed at the matter. Why? Well, that's as common as people breathe. That's like saying, do not be amazed when you go to places in the world and you see people breathing. Does it make the oppression right? Absolutely not, it doesn't. But should you be amazed at that thing? No, absolutely not. Why? Well, one thing, the natural inclination of the human heart is domination of people. If you get into a room full of people and you ask them where they want to go eat, you'll have an hour-long discussion until someone has had enough, usually the pastor, and goes, "We're eating here! I want to eat there. I didn't ask." Telling you where. Now, some people go, well, that's not oppression. That's just the pastor being hungry and needing to eat. But when you get in a group of people, you will have those that rise to the top for the sake of power. I had this discussion earlier in the week. Military, police, government, and ministers typically attract to them individuals that are driven by power. Powerful positions. And a lot of them get in those roles and then they abuse the power for their own purposes. Why? Because they're driven by power. You see this with abusive police officers. You see this with abusive government officials. You see this with the bureaucrat. You see this with doctors. You see this in any profession where there is an element where there is power and influence and prestige. You will have those folks there. That shouldn't be shocking. That doesn't mean it's okay. He's not saying that's okay. But when you, and as Israel did in 1 Samuel, said we reject God because we want to be like everybody else, then don't be surprised when your leaders behave just like everybody else. You just can't expect that. Now, why is that? Well, because we all seek the highest level of water, or water seeks its own level in a situation. Notice what it says. For the high official is watched by a higher official, and yet there are higher ones over them. Now, one of the ways to look at this is that the kings or the leaders have the advantage over the land. That's one way of looking at it. Well, why is that? Because he commits to the king cultivating the land. And how do we understand? This whole block here is a huge text-critical problem that, for translators, makes the text very difficult. So understand, I'm not trying to twist what's going on here. There are things in the text that make it difficult to translate to English. He's watched over higher officials, but the gain for the land, but this is the gain for the land everywhere. The king is committed to cultivating the field. Well, how do we translate that? The advantage to the land is for everyone, but the king cultivates the land. Probably not. This also, one of the ways to look at it is the always referring back to the poor and the officials are higher, and hence everyone cultivated is by permissive force. Or another way to look at the translation is the king is over the land which he allows it to be cultivated. So the king owns all the land, and you cultivate it because you work for the king. Well, that fits a little bit better with the context of 1 Samuel 8, now doesn't it? Because the king will take your best land. He will take your best grains. He will take your best fruit. He will take your best animals. He will take your best servants. He will take your young men. He will do all these things. Now, you work the land. The land is yours. You get a benefit from the land. But the king is the one that receives the greatest benefit from the land. And so do all the officials above. Because again, in 1 Samuel 8, he assigns officials above them. Now, when you have that, will you have oppression of poor people? Sure you will. Does the Bible provide for the not oppression of poor? Sure it does. It provides a means of protection for the poor. One of the ways it does that is when you glean a field, are you allowed to glean the whole field or harvest the whole field? No, you could not glean the corners, and you could not harvest the edges right up next to the road. If 2 strands of barley or grain fall to the ground, could you pick them up? No. Could you if there were 3 or more? Yes. This was how you maintained the poor and the widow and the indigent in your culture. And what happens probably about at the time this was written, if you look at other prophets, they were not doing that. And that's what they mean in many cases by the oppression of the poor. The people that were gleaning in the fields, to include the religious leaders, to include the military leaders, to include the political leaders, were harvesting the entire field. Because that's one of the accusations later on in one of the prophets. I should have looked before I got into the pulpit, but I didn't. And so that's kind of the force in when it's taking. The king is over the land, but the people are allowed to tend the land. But here's the thing, is because you have this tier of structure, you have the tier for abuse. And here's the thing is, why are you surprised at that? You voted for the king. Back in 1 Samuel 8, you said, give us a king so we can be like all the other nations. And you knew all the other nations behaved in this manner. And yet you embraced it. You invited the problem in to your culture. Why are you surprised the problem exists? Now, he's not saying that that's good. He's not saying that that's noble. He's not saying that that's right. But he's also kind of holding up a mirror to culture and saying, you brought this in. Why are you surprised? When I drive and exceed the speed limit and eventually get caught, should I act with righteous indignation that I got a speeding ticket? No. Why? I performed the dangerous act of driving fast. If I run my mouth today at lunch while the football games are going on and I start running everybody's team down, should I be surprised when everyone beats me up? No. That's why I make fun of Delight. I can outrun her with her walker even with my limp. Know who you're picking on. There, see, look. Weaker than you. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's not saying that that's right. What it's saying is you've brought this in because you're wanting a life without a holy God, and God gave it to you. And then you're surprised that injustice happens. Why? Because justice, if you look at the text, comes from a holy God. He provides for us what justice looks like. Don't steal, don't murder, don't covet people's things. You know, well, is covetous a crime? It can be. We're going to see here in a minute where it will be. Don't sleep with your neighbor's wife. Is that a crime? Well, certainly not a community building thing, and it usually leads to crimes. There's a song by Leonard Skinner called Give Me 3 Steps, written about a situation like that. That's right. Some of you go, I've never heard that song. I wouldn't say listen to it on the way to church for worship, but if it's on in the background, yeah, all right, yeah, it's okay. Yeah. Then he shifts slightly, because here's the thing is, typically the oppression of the poor for the purpose of gain on the land and a gain of crops has to do with the accumulation of wealth and money. And he begins with, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This is also vanity. When goods increases, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has the owner but to see them with his eyes? The sweet sleep of the laborer, whether he eats little or much, but a full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. So don't be surprised when you see oppression that comes in. Why? Because they're going to take the stuff from you and then they're going to amass this. And then he warns, he goes, listen, the amassing of wealth does not bring the security that you think it brings. We all believe that if we get a little bit more money, we will all be happier with more money. You see this in our culture today with folks embracing concepts like, well, I think socialism is better because it ends wealth. It does not. Go look at every country where it's tried. There are people at the top that amass all the wealth because they're happy making you poor. They are the definition of oppressing the poor. Why? Because they're not going to live poorly. They're going to live well. You're going to live poorly, but that's what's going on. All those governments, even capitalism, can lead to what's known as a totalitarian state. It is the justice of a holy God and the understanding of a Christian work ethic that prevents that from happening. What happens is when you have people that are not satisfied with what they have, money, cars, guns, whatever, baseball cards, who cares, whatever it is, they will never be satisfied with what they have. They will always want theirs and someone else's. Look at the adulterer. He's not satisfied with the wife he has. He wants his wife and your wife. Why? Because he's not satisfied. It's covetousness. Covetousness leads us to do things that we normally wouldn't do. Covetousness can also lead us to do things that are criminal activities. That's why we treat that as a crime. Nor he who loves wealth with his income. His income is not enough. His sheep are not enough. He has to have not just my sheep, but your sheep. There's a story in the Bible in which one man needed another man's sheep. Yes, it comes out of 1 Samuel. There's a man by the name of David who saw a woman on top of a roof. He took the woman and he slept with her. And then he took the man who was wed to her and sent him into battle to be at the front of the army. And then he demanded that Joab withdraw, leaving him at the forefront to be slaughtered. And Nathan goes to him and said, there was a man who had a herd of sheep, flock, actually, terminology. And there was a man that had just a little ewe lamb, and that lamb was like his child. And the rich man went and took the ewe lamb and slaughtered it and fed it to his guest. And David stood up in righteous indignation and goes, that man shall surely die. And Nathan goes, this is an actual translation, you demand. David had wives beyond wives, and yet he wasn't satisfied and took a man's wife and then murdered the man, making his nephew complicit in the murder and the entire people in the palace complicit in the murder. Was that injustice? Oh, yes. And here's the cool thing is while David goes unpunished directly, David is punished indirectly because God kills all four of his sons with that. And if you're a parent, I think in that case you would go, kill me, not my kids. But God takes 4 sons and divides the kingdom because of him. The pursuit of wealth for its sake of wealth will leave you unsatisfied. How do I know? The pursuit of firearms for the sake of firearms will leave me unsatisfied. I know that that's my natural proclivity. My wife she probably needs to have the speaker on back there to where you hear her go, amen! The cool thing is I get off work before she does, and I can sneak them into the house. And then when she asks me, is that a new gun? Oh, no, I've had that for a bit. I technically haven't lied. I brought it home at 3. She gets home at like 6. I've had it for a bit. A bit is an indiscriminate period of time. Am I lying? Yeah. Am I being dishonest? Yeah. Actually, though, I don't keep that for my wife. I tease about that. I tell my wife all that. Why? Because I don't want her to go open the safe one day and go, I have no idea where all this came from. And also then I tell her what I actually paid for them so she doesn't sell them for what I claim I paid for them. So. Yeah, that would be dangerous now, wouldn't it? When goods increase, they increase who eat them. The more you have, the more you consume. The more you consume, the more you want. The more you want, the more you have. We see this with folks that it kills me. There used to be a Weight Watchers program in my town when I was a boy growing up, and it was at the church next to the Pizza Inn. And on Wednesday night was the weigh-in, and they would all come and weigh in. Pass their weigh-in, and guess where they went right after that? The Pizza Inn. But it was okay because they ordered a Diet Coke. Right? I drink Coke Zeros, but then back before I started losing weight, I'll take the double meat, double cheese, cheeseburger, large fry, onion rings, and make it a Diet Coke. I might as well just go full bore and drink a Coke. Because the calorie consumption that I'm taking in with all that will not matter to one more Coke. Look at the size of the food we eat compared to the rest of the world. When we go out to eat, and you used to be that we could only get like a small burger. Now you can get massive burgers, and we don't cut it in half. We just consume. We're one of the wealthiest nations in the world, but we're also one of the sickest nations in the world because we eat more than we really ought to be eating. And we know it's bad for us, but we will continue to consume. Why? Because we can. We know the pursuit of money leads to greed, and that greed leads us to do things that we know we shouldn't do, but we will continue to pursue things out of greed. Why? Because we just want more. There is no satisfaction in the accumulation of things outside of them being utilized in a proper manner with the Holy God. He's not talking about having wealth, and he's not talking about having things. He's not talking about eating food. This is not what he's talking about. He's talking about these things being utilized in their abuses, because in their abuse, they lead to destruction to other folks. Think about all the guns I have. Somebody else doesn't have one. And the King of England could just walk in their house and quarter troops there, but not mine. That was a joke. It was a joke. What advantage has the owner but to see them with his eyes? Then you have this weird statement. Sweet is the sleep of the laborer, whether he eats little or much. But the stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. One of my favorite stories, getting in time, I like to watch it. I like watching A Christmas Carol. George C. Scott does an amazing job in The Christmas Carol. I really think it's one of his better roles. And Dickens does a great job in writing the story. And if you watch the one with George C. Scott, you have the dichotomy between two men. Bob Cratchit and Ebenezer Scrooge. Bob Cratchit goes home, and he has a large family, and they eat very modestly. And he is a wealthy man because he has a family. And though they have very little, he is well loved and respected. Ebenezer Scrooge is a wealthy man who has turned his back on just about every family member. And when he goes home, if you haven't watched the story, you gotta watch this, great. When he goes home, he locks himself into his house behind multiple doors with lots of locks because he is afraid that someone is going to come and rob him. And actually, that's what happens is after he dies, they rob him. Who gets the better sleep? Bob Cratchit or Ebenezer Scrooge? Bob Cratchit does. Does he have less than Ebenezer Scrooge? He does. Monetarily, absolutely. He'd be considered poor. But he has a very wealthy home because he has a wife and children, even though he's going to have a very sick child. Now, the purpose of what Dickens points out is Ebenezer Scrooge's miserly behavior and the change of the heart, but unchanged by the work of a holy God, that's what happens. And it's better to not have and get by with little, he's going to talk about this here in a moment, than to be wealthy and be robbed of sleep because you're afraid that someone is going to take. Someone is going to ruin what I have. I bought this really nice car. You see this at the store. Someone buys a really nice car, and then they decide to keep it from being damaged. They do what with it? They park across 2 parking spaces. My brother and I fixed a guy one day. We boxed him in. And then we went in and watched a movie. He thought he was somebody till he saw my brother. And then me. My brother stands about 6'3". So, yeah, he was very upset till we walked out. And then he got very calm and polite. But hey, he didn't take up parking spaces like that anymore. What was he worried about? Someone might scratch his door. Go to H-E-B, you're going to get your door dinged. It's as common as breathing. The pursuit of wealth, the pursuit of things, the pursuit of all the things that the earth provides is a vapor. He's going to tell you that here in a moment. It's a vanity. It's a vapor. Why? Because you're only here for a moment. And many of you that are older are like, I've been on this earth for 80, 70, 60. Tomorrow will be 55 for me. But hey, I'm holding out for Mandy having a baby tomorrow because now it starts, it's like rolling the clock over. There we go. I've been on the earth a long time. When you consider how old the earth is and civilizations on the earth, you've been on it a blip. And yet you live intensely for the things upon the earth and not the work of a holy God. You invest your times into the pursuit of the wealth upon the earth. Now, here's the thing, is money's not bad, and he's going to tell you that here in a moment. It's not bad. But the overemphasis upon it is. Why? Well, because it leads to the oppression of the poor. It leads to the exploitation of other people. It leads to problems in your own family structure. Why? He's going to talk about that. There's a grievous evil that I have seen under the sun. Riches were kept by the owner to his hurt. And those riches are lost in a bad venture. And he is the father of a son, but he has nothing in his hand. And as he came from his mother's womb, so shall he go. Naked as he came, and shall take nothing from his toil, that he may be carried away in his hand. So this is also grievous evil. Just as he came, so shall he go. And what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Did you catch that? Who toils for the wind? Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness, in much vexation, sickness, and anger. It's a grievous thing this man has done. He has amassed wealth, but in a bad business venture. He loses it all. And he looks to his son, who's hoping to have an inheritance, and he goes, don't have anything. Now, he has wealth. He has more money than he needs. That's the point of the text. He's got more than he ever needs, but he wants more. So he makes a risky decision so he can get more. And in that behavior, he bankrupts not just himself, but also his future progeny and his children down. And the text doesn't call that, oops, that just happens. He calls that a great evil. Why? Because the pursuit was not doing with the things that you had for the betterment of your family, for what you were building towards your congregation, for your church, for your God, for your family, but for yourself. And then he gives this weird advice. And it's a very poignant advice for every single one of them. No matter how many guns I own, I cannot take them with me. No matter how many cars I own, I cannot take them with me. Now, no matter how many tools I own, and I love me some tools. I got a lot of my grandfather's tools that he used to use when he did construction. I've got all of his old jack planes, everything. Got them all. No matter how many of those things I acquire, guess what's going to happen? When I die, they will go to someone else. And not a thing one I can do about it. And so the amassing of wealth, for what purpose am I doing that for? Am I doing it just for myself? Well, here's the thing, is naked you come into this world, and naked you shall go. You come in from your mother's womb, and you will exit to the ground. And the pursuit of all these things just to pursue to have more leads to, notice what the text says, it's a grievous evil. Why? Because you're not pursuing the God that buys you, the God that saves you, the God that sends His Son into the world to redeem you. You're pursuing a relationship with things that absolutely have no meaning, no value, no nothing. Yet you assign them the greatest meaning in your life. There are people in this world that will pursue a dollar down to the final penny and are massively wealthy and claim they're robbed of a penny. I had a former brother-in-law that way. One day we went to, and we all pulled together and we bought some sausage biscuits, and he was upset that he didn't get, he paid 10 cents more. He demanded that he got 10 cents because we were short 10 cents. And so I said, well, the next time we go, we're not ordering for you. He says, well, I'm the owner of the company. I said, I don't care who you are. You're going to throw a fit like this. You're not going to be part of this. He got all mad and stomped off. Why? Well, because he is one of the biggest thieves I know. Now, he'll claim to be a very godly man. He'll get up in front of the pulpit and he'll sing beautiful songs, but he is a wretched thing. He is a wretched thing. Has beaten multiple wives, my sister included. He's a wretched thing. But oh man, does he look good. And oh man, he pursues everything but God. He is focused in on wealth. And guess what? He's losing it by the handful. Why? Because Haggai talks about you putting your money in your purse. And when you're not pursuing the things of God, your purse develops a hole. And the money falls from your purse and you not knowing where it goes. As he came from his mother's womb, shall he go naked as he came, and he shall take nothing for his toil that he carry with his hands. You've heard this cliches in sermons all over the place and in funeral sermons. You will never see a U-Haul behind a hearse. It tells me of the joke one time. The preachers always love good preacher jokes. There's a lady, her husband was on his deathbed, and he said, baby, I want you to take all that I have and put it in the attic above the bed, to where when I die, on the way through, I can grab some of it and take it with me. So she does that. She has it all put there. And so the minute he dies, she takes off. She bolts upstairs. She runs to the attic, flings up the door, and she starts screaming and wailing, inconsolable. And they go, what's wrong? We know he's dead. She goes, no, it's not that he died. He went the other direction. He didn't go the other direction. He just can't take it with him. Well, he probably went the other way, but he can't take it with him. And we amass things thinking that we will always have it. And this is the mindset divorced from a holy God. The acquisition of things for the purpose of things, regardless of what the thing is. Wealth, power, money, all those things. All of us in this room are motivated by something. I'm less motivated by money than accomplishing tasks, but some of you are motivated by power. Some of you are motivated by money. Some of you are motivated by prestige or awards or accolades. We all have different motivations for the things we do. And in proper order, they benefit the work that we do for the God's kingdom, but out of sync and out of order, we become malicious things, even while doing things for God. Things for God. This is grievous evil. Just as he came, so shall he go. And what is there to him for the toil? And what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Did you catch that? All of that pursuit, all of that purchasing, all of that miserly, all of that behavior that is focused in on the self, not focused on the kingdom of God, not focused on doing things for God's kingdom, not focused on anything other than the self, all of that work is working for the wind. Now, why is that an interesting concept? What does wind do? Have you ever dropped a piece of paper in a windstorm? You will get the best aerobics ever. Why? Because as soon as you're about ready to catch it, a wind blows it away again. The implication is you will not catch it. The wind is constantly blowing it from you, keeping it from you. And yet you will dedicate your life for that. And your toil is pursuing the wind. Let me know when you catch it. Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness and much vexation, sickness and anger. I refer you back to Charles Dickens's imagery of Ebenezer Scrooge. In the movie with George C. Scott, he goes into a room that's very dark and dank and is not well cleaned, and he sits down to a bowl of soup beans. Now, he is a wealthy man. He could be eating steak, but in his miserly state, he eats a bowl of beans because to spend money means that that's money he doesn't have. I'm going to help you out. I like green beans, and I don't like pork and beans. That's it. Do not serve me beans. I won't eat them. I'll tell you why. My parents used to serve me rice and beans when I was a kid. And I used to get whippings because I refused to eat them. My dad would go, "You'll eat them and you'll enjoy it," and grab his belt. And I'm like, "Well, I'm going to eat them. There ain't no way in the world you're going to make me enjoy it." And to this day, I don't eat beans. And people go, "Are you well?" I said, "I've taken beatings to not eat beans." I want you to think about that. So my trouble is I want a ribeye steak. But to his darkness, he'll eat in darkness, to much vexation, sickness, and anger. The wealth that you have pursued, the things that you have bought do not lead to your betterment, but lead to your destruction. That's what he says. "Behold, I have seen what I have seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in the toil with which one toils under the sun the few days of his life that God has given him. For this is his lot. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them, and to accept his lot and rejoice in this toil, this is a gift from God. For he will not much remember the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the joy of his heart." Is God decrying having wealth? He is not. Is God decrying having wealth for the individual, for the sole purpose of the individual, to where the individual is so miserly that he cannot utilize his wealth for anything but himself? Yeah, that's what he's decrying. We run into this, and actually our culture today, you'll have people today going, "I think we should the tax the rich mantra is a covetousness statement. It violates the Ten Commandments. Why? Because you're looking at someone that has more money than you, go, because they have more money than me, we should take more of their money. That's covetousness, folks. We may not like that, but that's what it is. We see this point out. I had a man come visit me, come to talk to the church, and he was very upset because one of the churches over in Belton, he found out that the pastor was making X number of dollars, and he goes, "Well, I don't think a pastor should make that money. What do you think?" Now, here's the thing is, if you ask me what I think, and you get angry at what I tell you, the problem is you. If you don't want to know what I think, don't go, "What do you think?" Because I am going to tell you. You getting mad at me for asking a fool question like that is not my fault. It's your fault. My answer to him was, I really don't care what one church decides to pay its pastor. That's between that congregation and that pastor. Well, what do you think about this guy making millions of dollars? Well, I will tell you that I don't think that me personally as a minister, I should make that kind of money, but that's not my call for that church. Now, a minister making that kind of money, I think there's other problems involved because he's making that kind of money, but it's not my call to make that call if that's between him and his congregation and they have the ability to do so. That's what we call when we do things like that. At the root of that is socialism. Because I believe that people should only make certain dollar amounts in what we have. I believe that you should make whatever you think your value is and the company is willing to pay you. That's the difference between the two. And if I have value in the things that I do, then I expect to be compensated well for it. If I don't have value in the things I do, I expect to not make a lot of money. Why? Because you make decisions when you go to school. That doesn't mean that you have to be educated to make a lot of money. If you're an electrician in Killeen or a plumber in Killeen, you are making, from what I understand, really good money. That's what I understand. But I just put it to you, the AC tech for the church made a lot of money this year. At the first of the season, we paid $7,000 to have an AC put in. We just replaced a new AC. The price jumped $3,000. We paid $10,000. You go, well, we should have shopped around. That's the price, folks. It went up. Why? Well, because that's what he's valued at, and that's what the parts are valued at, and therefore we must pay if we want to have reconditioned air. When you set artificial prices, economics is basic economics. You set artificial prices, you put the economy in a tilt, and then you end up spiraling. It's not what he's talking about here. If you are wealthy, enjoy the wealth you have, but not for the fact that the wealth is for you and you alone. It's for God has given this to you. It is also for whom God has given the wealth to be enjoyed and possessions and power to enjoy them, but not to enjoy them necessarily for their own self-pleasure, but to enjoy them in making, 1, your community better, 2, your temple better, 3, your churches better. There's nothing wrong in having wealth. There's nothing wrong in enjoying wealth. But there is something wrong where your wealth ends up becoming for you and you alone versus for me and those around me. You had this discussion like a couple days ago when the jackpot hit, $1.8 billion? You ask people, well, what will you do with that $1.8 billion? Well, most folks have very grandiose ideas, but pretty soon if they win, those grandiose ideas go out the window and it becomes my precious. Oh, I'm going to endow it to school and I'm going to do this and I'm going to give everybody I know $10 million. And then when you start adding up how much $10 million for everybody you know, you end up with nothing. And you go, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. For me, it's going to be hard to do because I've got to buy a ticket in order to get the lotto. So I almost won last night. Someone bought a ticket for me for my birthday, so I didn't buy the ticket. If I'd have won, I'd have given some time. No. Yeah, maybe. No. Well, no. You see the constant battle we have. Even I am not immune to it. Why is that? Well, because when you have that kind of money, you want to do the right thing, but then you go, but I have all this money. And notice what he says. It is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil in which one has under the sun. Starts that paragraph there. Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, your job is to enjoy the toil in which you have. Folks, we are not made to sit upon our posteriors and do nothing. That is an American Western concept. In this day and age when this was written, and up until just recently, people worked until they died. Work is a good thing. We have taught an entire generation of young people that work is something that should be shunned. And you'll hear this. They're called dinks. Dual income, no kids. Dinks, D-I-N-Ks. Just like you have awfuls, affluent, white, liberal female, or female liberal. Then, whichever one. You spell it out for you. I screw that up all the time. Dinks will go, I want to enjoy life now and not be encumbered by children. The problem is, are you put upon the earth to enjoy all the cool stuff of life, which is what this passage is railing against, or to have families and have progeny? The purpose of marriage is for children. The purpose of life is for you to work. Folks, none of us really like and get up going, I can't. Well, maybe we do. Some of us love our job and God can't wait to go to work tomorrow. Some of us wake up and go, but we are made to work. When I get vacation time and like Steph has to go to work and things like that, I can only do maybe a day and a half, and then I have to show up at work. I used to have, Fridays are my off day, but if you come up to the church, guess where I'm usually at? In the office. Why? Well, I can sit at home and do the list that Stephanie gives me. Or I can show up at work and pretend to... No, I'm kidding. I can show up at work. And yet we have a culture today that shuns working. Well, I don't want to work. It's hard. No one said work was fun. Otherwise, they would have called it fun and not work. It's called work. It's called, here, they use the word toil. And says for you to enjoy the toil. I think Jimmy's going to have to go off to Ranger School here in a little bit. We're going to see. And there's a motto in Ranger School. It says, embrace the suck. Because it's just going to suck. And if you've never experienced that, you don't know what they're saying. But essentially, it's just going to be miserable. And you can complain about how miserable it is, or you can embrace the miserableness and move forward. Why? Well, because one leads you just being miserable. The other one gets you past being miserable. For this is his lot. The few days of his life that God has given him, man is to enjoy the toil. Let me help you out. While you're on the earth, you should be working. Now, whether you're working at a job or working for Christ's kingdom or working at the church or working to help with your community, this is one of the things that you should be having this conversation with you about. But there is no such thing in the vocabulary of the Bible of I am retard. That's an American concept. And while we are upon the earth, we are to toil. How? For God's kingdom, for God's growth, to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, to work a job to where we can fund the things that we like to fund, to have food to eat, to help God's house be prosperous. But all the things that we are to be about life is to be toil that we are to enjoy in working for a greater purpose than ourselves, i.e., a holy God. Why? Because that requires stuff out from us, not internally. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and his possessions and power to enjoy them. So if that is God's lot for you, that doesn't mean that everyone else gets to look at you and go, as a rich person, you should give me one. He didn't say that. Nor did he say having wealth was something that should be shunned and wicked or evil. You have that in our culture today. He didn't say that. He also makes it clear that those people that have that, those are gifts from God. Which means when you look at that and say that's unfair, what have you just said about God's gift? That it itself is unfair. Well, look, I really wish that some of these baseball players and football players that are making millions of money, like Travis Kelce, he's going to be wealthy and then he's going to divorce and then Taylor Swift is going to write a whole album about him. You think I'm lying. Look at her, the train wreck of men she's left behind her and all the hits that have been written in their name. Yeah, I got a whole playlist for that song. I won't mention it to you from the pulpit. To accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. Work, toil, wealth, prosperity, not prosperity, wherever you are, these are God's gifts to you. And enjoy God in those areas. Why? Because this is what God has provided for you. I wish God would provide a little bit more. So do I. I'd like to make football player money. I'd love for my wife and teachers all across America to make football player money. Well, I think that's a more noble cause than chasing a pig skin around on. But here's the thing: is you can't have advertisements at school. I try to get a sponsor for the service, Coca-Cola. If you're watching, notice what it says here: for he will not remember much, or will not much remember the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the joy of his heart. He is not consumed with the day-to-day, and he loses track of the days that he's working, because he is pursuing the things that God has put in his life, and he's pursuing these things out of a love for a holy God. You've all worked a job. Which is easier to work? A job where you are busy from the time you go in to the time you leave, or a job where nothing happens at all that day? Which is easier? When you're busy. Downrange. The worst enemy downrange is not the people that shoot at you. It's the boredom that comes when nothing happens. Because that's when soldiers get in trouble. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right? Yeah. When there's boredom, soldiers do stupid things. To which then the chain of command has to go and answer for all of that. But when you're busy, you're busy. And you're focused in upon accomplishing the task. Here's the thing, folks. What are you busy about? What is your focus in your life? Are you about the pursuit of wealth and all the things within that category? The things, the prestige, all those things. Are you about pursuing in the toil of your life the work and the requirements of a holy God? Do you pursue wealth over pursuing the kingdom? Do you pursue things over the pursuing of people knowing Christ? Can you witness to people about Disney Plus but not witness to people about Jesus Christ? Which are you pursuing? The text here tells you that when you pursue the things of God, He keeps you occupied with the joy of your heart. He didn't say with the joy of money. He didn't say with the joy of possessions. He didn't say with the joy of X. He said with the joy of His heart. You're here today. You've allowed yourself to be occupied of things that in themselves aren't bad, but of themselves alone are bad. I love firearms, but if that was my sole pursuit of my life, that was the sole end of my existence, that's a bad thing. There's nothing wrong in the owning of firearms, unless you live in a leftist state. Anyhow. There's nothing wrong in that, except for the fact that if I spent all the money for the household on all those things, that becomes bad. Why? Because that becomes my God. If you're here today and you have allowed other things than a holy God to supplant Him in your life, I'm here to call you to repentance. Why? Because you are chasing after the wind and you will never catch it. You're here today and you have shunned labor and work, not just from work in the sense of going out and earning a living, but also work for the kingdom of God. I'm here to call you to repentance. Why? Churches do not grow without people to go into the crop. Churches do not grow without people sharing the gospel. If everyone in this room shared the gospel today, this room would be doubled. And in a very short period of time, this room would be packed. But we are focused on the toil of our hands and not the toil for the Lord. So what are you toiling for this week as you stand?